What's happening, troops? It's your friendly local neighbourhood drunk Scotsman here, and today we're going to be continuing the series that we started last time on video game debates. So let's open a cold one and let's get into it. So, in modern gaming, especially this economic and social climate, the platform that you choose to make your primary gaming platform, whether that be console or PC, which is what we're going to focus in this video, it can be very difficult to make that choice. And all platforms can actually be completely different and have pros and cons that affect different people depending on your personal circumstances, such as your budget, your personal living situation, etc. More and more, this is developing over time as people's living situations and stuff they've completely changed basically now to what they were, say, even 20 years ago. Never mind now. So, just a quick disclaimer to start this video off, and I'm only going to say it the once this time because in the previous video I did say it about 4 or 5 times just to get the point through, but this time I'm only going to say it the once. These opinions and statements that I make in this video, they're solely based off my personal experience and opinions. So if you guys have different ones, let me know in the comments. Or like I said in the previous video, even do an old school video reaction to what I'm saying in this video. So I'm going to start this off by giving you a little bit about my personal gaming background. I'll do it in this video, and I'll also do it a little bit in the sequel to this video, covering different points. So, my personal gaming background, I've been solely a PC gamer since 2018. I've had my own Steam account since 2012. Before that, I just used my dad's account because I was too young at the time to have my own account. But personally, I've literally played on both PC and console my whole life, whether it be playing games like Star Wars Galaxies and the old Empire Earth games and that back in the day, as well as obviously playing on the PS2, PS3, PS4. And the PS5 was the first generation that I chose to just completely skip out on consoles because, for me personally, when I have a PC as powerful as mine, there's not a point to me having a console anymore. For reasons I'll discuss later in the video. And both console and PC have had major impacts on my gaming life. Like when I was 13 and played The Last of Us for the first time, when it released, it changed completely what I thought about what a video game plot could be. Uncharted, for example, Halo, all that stuff on console, it had major impacts on what I thought gaming could be. But also, when it came to on PC, like strategy games like Empire Earth, it helped generate my thinking skills for later on life and stuff like that. And I'm a huge advocate of video games in general are highly beneficial to both your mental and physical state, especially when the physical concerns of games like Wii Sports and all that. Growing up, if you couldn't make it to the gym or if it was rainy outside and that, you could just fire on Wii Sports and you're all good, you'll get your exercise for the day. But in 2018 was when I majorly started getting into building PCs, and before that I'd tinkered with like my old desktop PC, had an R7 260X in it and stuff like that back in the day. Could run a lot of games, but it was definitely on the mid, you would probably call it low to mid end back then, because gaming PCs, price wise, we had like a renaissance era in the late 2010s where everything got really affordable, especially on the used market. So around that time, I decided to just go full in That's it. PC's my main platform. And at the time I was a student, so I used my student money to do it, basically. At the time, I didn't want to put too much money into it right away, so I decided to start with a GT 1030. Now, as we know today, not a great card, but for playing older games at the time, which is mostly what I wanted to do, that was fine. I jumped from that to a 1060. Then I found a 2060 on Amazon for really cheap. But then I found a used 1080 Ti on eBay. So I jumped to that. And then I bought my first ever major expensive purchase when I spent about £900 on a 3080, which sadly last year around November time ended up just dying one day and it just wouldn't turn on anymore, sadly. But on the bright side, I ended up buying a newer 5070, which is what I currently have now. So that's my personal history with graphics cards. There was one time where I did have a Vega 56 for a little while that I bought used, but it had this really weird glitch where it would randomly, no matter what game you were playing, black screen and the fans would just max up to full. No matter changing the thermal paste, thermal pads, drivers reinstalled about 20 times. And at that point, I kind of just swore off AMD graphics cards because personal note, I just don't trust them. Because compared to my experience with Nvidia, I've just had nothing but bad luck with AMD, and the same goes for friends that have had AMD graphics cards as well. Now, just a little context then on my current specs. I currently have a Ryzen 7 3700X, the 5070 I previously mentioned, 32 gigs of DDR4, Corsair RAM, and a bunch of SSDs. So I do have a really decent, powerful gaming PC just now that gives me zero problems. And as we Scottish say, touch wood. So nothing bad happens. So, first of all, we're going to start with the advantages of PC gaming. So, the very first one is the one that everyone will go to right away. So I've just thought, might as well just get it out of the way first. The higher performance. It is unprecedented and incomprehensible how better performance you get on a PC compared to a console. You get higher frame rates, you get higher resolutions, you get technologies such as DLSS and FSR that you don't get on console. You only get Sony and Microsoft's own versions of them that aren't just plain and simple aren't as good because you don't get as detailed. And overall, a high-end gaming PC will always outperform current gen consoles. And the argument could be made within the first year of new gen consoles coming out, they're somewhat comparable, but within a year, usually it's like double to triple the performance of a console. So I thought might as well just get that one out the way because that's one of the ones that it's not really debatable. And especially now that consoles are having to come out with like pro models halfway through a generation just to keep up, kinda cements that point in. My second main point, and the point that I really love probably the most about PC gaming, is you literally have access to multiple decades worth of games all on the one platform. Take for example a PS5, that's only backwards compatible with PS4 games. You can't put a PS1 game in and it'll work. Whereas on PC, you can literally play games from the 80s and it will work on a PC. Fair enough, you might need to muck about with some settings or stuff like that, but you can still do it. Whereas, unless you severely hack a console, that isn't an option on console. And that actually brings me into my next point about emulators. Now, for legal reasons, I don't condone piracy, and technically, emulating games that you don't own physically or in any form is a form of piracy. So I'm just putting that out there. But with emulation, you can take any game from any console up to around even the Switch, minus like the newer consoles like PS5, PS4, and Xbox Series. You can literally emulate any console before then. And the strides that emulation, especially for the PS3 and 360 generation, it's night and day. I mean, a couple of years ago, you couldn't even play like 360 or PS3 games without it being a laggy mess, and now you can, which is amazing. So that even further opens the possibilities of games you can play on a PC, making it basically endless. And even with newer Xbox games and PlayStation games, they all end up just getting ported to PC eventually anyway, so it doesn't really matter that for newer consoles the emulators aren't there yet. But they will be at some point because they always end up doing it anyway. Now, PC gaming, another advantage of it is that it is fully customizable to your personal needs and wants. So, like, you have a certain budget or you need it to do a certain thing. Like, say you want to play games that are more CPU intensive, you have the choice to go, right, I'll spend less money on X, Y, and Z and get a better CPU. And on the flip side, if you're playing more graphically intensive games, you can go, right, more money on my graphics card, less money on my CPU. Obviously, making sure it's still balanced, but the option is still there. And on PC, you can customize literally everything. You don't even need to use Windows if you want. If you use a program that only works on Linux, then you can. And you can also choose what keyboard and mouse you use, what controller. You can literally use Xbox, PC, Switch, PC only controllers, anything you want basically on a PC, and there's ways to make it all work. With stuff like Steam Input and that, it's honestly, that is another amazing part. And another thing, PCs, it's a personal computer. It's not just a gaming PC. With a console, all you can really do with it is play games and watch things like Netflix and YouTube. A PC's still the same computer you would use at work back at the office, only it's got a decent graphics card in it. That is what separates a PC from a gaming PC. But at its core, it can still do the same things. So it's actually better potentially. Say you have a young kid and they're going through school at the moment, especially like during COVID and stuff, where they were doing all their school stuff online. There was a real surge in parents just going, right, well, we'll just get you a gaming PC then, instead of buying you a laptop for school and a console for you to play your games on, because it can do both. It is a multitasking machine, because that's what it was originally developed for, not for gaming. It just so happens that gaming is at its peak on the same platform you do your taxis on. Another one is the price of games. Now, usually games on PC are in general like £10 cheaper than a new release on console. PC games, except for like the PS5 games that are ported over and some Xbox games, in the UK at least, we've not hit the £70 pricing for most games on Steam yet. Most games are still on release day around like £60 or so, or like 100 for the Ultimate Edition usually. But out with release day, the sales that you get on PC and the fact that you have options to buy from other platforms such as Loaded, that used to be called CD Keys, G2A, etc. These open up a whole new world of possibilities. I mean, Loaded, for example, you can get most games on there day of release for like £20 off. And you're laughing at that point. At most of my games now, unless they're on sale on Steam, if I'm buying it on release, I'm getting it offloaded because the money I have saved over the years on Steam sales, GOG sales, Epic giving away free games every week, and up the whole month of December they give away a new game every day. It's the amount I've saved is probably why I was able to afford a 5070. Another one that I've always said, mods. Mods are starting to get there on console with games like the Bethesda games and a couple of others, I believe, on console, but it's still nowhere near what you can do on PC from fan-made mods on sites like Nexus Mods or even the Steam Workshop. I mean, you can have Thomas the Tank Engine in Skyrim, for God's sake. That's probably the oldest example that a lot of people use. But games like Warcraft and all that, they got total conversion mods that led to games like Dota and stuff being a thing. Counter-Strike was originally a Half-Life mod, and things like that. There's full-on games that start. Gary's mod is a Source Engine mod, and we've had full franchises spark from being mods, and it's amazing, and it's something that just can't happen on a console. And like I mentioned before, you have more flexibility to what platform you choose. Most people choose Steam, but if you don't want to because of the DRM that's on Steam, you have the choice of GOG because they don't have any DRM. When you buy a game, it's yours to keep forever. So if GOG ever went down, you still have your games. Or you could use Epic for the free games in Fortnite. That's the only reason I would ever use Epic. You also have free multiplayer on PC. Now, I'm a massive advocate for free multiplayer on PC, and I believe all platforms should have free multiplayer because there is absolutely no reason why, in my opinion, the Xbox and PlayStation, even Nintendo now, from the Switch 1 onwards, now charge for multiplayer. In my opinion, it's nothing but money grabbing, and the money they make off of games and stuff, they could well run their own servers. If anyone wants to combat that point, come at me, bro. And when we go back to the choice of games that you've got and how many more, that's even further expanded by the fact that basically entire genres are exclusive to PC, minus a few outliers. I mean, real time strategy or strategy games in general, like the Total War series, the Civilization series, they're on console now, but anyone who plays it on console, who's tried it on PC, will tell you it's a watered down, really clunky to control version compared to on a PC. And that even further emphasises my point earlier about the exclusive games on PC that you just don't get on a console. I mean, the only Total War game that's ever been on console will be the Warhammer 40k one that's set to release sometime soon. But apart from that, no other Total War game, and that's a massive franchise on PC that's been going for over 20 odd years now, that you just don't get on console at all. Now, the final advantage that we're going to talk about in this video is simply the fact that if your needs change over time with what you need your PC to be able to do, you can simply upgrade it. Whereas with a console, you're simply just stuck with the performance from day one, and it doesn't change. The only exception would be if you went out and bought a pro console, but even then, the jump's never the same as if you go from one generation of graphics card to another. It's all very little jumps that are never really I mean, most people will tell you the PS4 Pro, for example, was never worth the extra price when compared to the base PS4, unless you already didn't have a base PS4 and you were joining the platform for the first time. But even then, you were probably better just going for the cheaper base model to save money that could just go to games because it wasn't worth it. This is obviously in a stark contrast to PC, where most upgrades are actually worth it. Like if you upgrade your CPU, 9 times out of 10 you'll get a good bump in performance, same with graphics cards. The only really difference is if maybe you go from a slower SSD to a slightly faster one, because that's just a case of, oh, load times are better or things like that. But that's really the only outlier that I would know of, really, when it comes to upgrading your PC. So now we're going to go into the disadvantages of PC gaming, because if we don't, this video is going to be about 40 minutes long. So I'll try and get through these ones maybe a little bit faster, because as I can see on my Audacity thing, we're already almost at 22 minutes. So let's try and fire through these, shall we? Or else we'll be here to next Tuesday. So the very first one I would say is that the barrier to entry for PC gaming is a little bit higher, mostly due to the fact that unless you just buy a pre-built, which already has its own cons, of you don't get to choose the parts that are in it, you don't get to make sure it's good versions of the parts that are in it, among others. And in general, I just really don't recommend pre-builts unless you're completely against the idea of not building it yourself or not having a friend that you know can build PCs to build it for you. But there's just a higher cost barrier in general, because you can go with a lower budget PC if you want, like around the £500 sort of mark, but with every little bit lower you go, the more you kinda lose out on performance at a certain point. So I would say at under like £700, you're sorta kinda just losing performance at that point. The second point is kinda comes from the first point as well. It's the technical knowledge and the technical issues that you can count happening at some point, whether it be a game crashing for some reason, or when you build your PC it just doesn't turn on for a stupid thing like not flicking the power switch, or you've not seated the RAM properly. And this is all things that over time you will learn and pick up, but at the start it can really put most people off because they're just not willing to deal with it at first. And that is what kind of leads you into the point about pre-builts, because yeah, it does alleviate you needing to do all this, but they have a really bad history of having the cheapest components that will fail just after the warranty period ends, so you can't take it back. And just in general, pre-builts just have a bad reputation for a reason amongst PC gamers like myself. And it's really just something 90% of us just wouldn't recommend unless you're willing to pay through the nose for one of the ones where you go on and you select all the components and that yourself, and then you pay a build fee, which is usually astronomical on top of what you've chosen for the parts, because at the end of the day, fair play, they've got to make money, but there's making money and then there's being stupid about it. The next point Is kinda comes from the technical issues and that, but it's a different point. It's the overall less streamlined process of everything. Like with a console, you just load it up, go onto the store, buy a game, click it, download, play. There you go. And within, depending on your internet, within 20 minutes you're playing a game. With a PC, you've got to make sure the game's on the correct launcher, because some games are Epic exclusives that if they don't come to Steam within the first year, they don't come at all. Like Alan Wake 2 is still a Epic Store exclusive, despite the first game and American Nightmare being on Steam. But because of the Epic Game Store getting so popular, they led to it being a store exclusive. And not just multiple launchers, you also have things like settings to make sure the game runs right. Because on console, you just load the game up and play it. You don't need to fiddle with settings to get your desired performance. There's also things like drivers when a new major game comes out to make sure it runs properly. Like Pragmata had its own driver set, stuff like that. And another problem with PC gaming is that if you want to stay at the highest of the high, you have to continuously, not continuously, but every so often, more often than a console usually, you'll need to upgrade some part of your PC if you want to keep playing every game at ultra settings. Because of constantly new products coming out, if you're still in like two generations or even before ago, you'll start to notice that, oh, this graphics card I bought 3 years ago isn't running everything at ultra anymore at 1440p. Time to upgrade. And that is kind of a bad thing about PC gaming that I would say is a harsh negative towards it, because it's it can put a lot of people who don't have that kind of money off, but always want the best performance. It's kind of like a two-sided coin, basically. On one hand, you get the performance that's better, but on the other hand, you will need to keep paying the price for it. Another one is that even though we are getting console ports now, a lot of the time they're quite poor when they come out. So one really recent example was Death Stranding 2. It had a lot of issues at launch, and even the first Death Stranding, when that was ported over, it was a very terrible port at launch. Not so much with the second one, but the first one was very bad. You had random stutters, even on high-end machines. Another one was Spider-Man 2. That was a terrible port at launch. Even like 3090s and stuff were struggling to maintain a consistent frame rate. It was terrible. I mean, they do eventually get fixed, but by the time they're fixed, you've either bet the game or you're no longer interested. So it's kind of a double-edged sword that way, because yeah, we're getting the games, but do we really want them if they're going to be this bad of a port? But I feel that one's more up to personal preference, because personally I'm willing to deal with a little bit of issues at the start of a game launching if it means I'm actually getting to play the game. The next one is probably hackers and cheaters are a lot more common on PC. Even nowadays, where I would say hackers and that are more common on console, but on PC, most of the time you will, when playing a multiplayer game, encounter a hacker at some point. Whereas I feel it is a little bit less common on console, because it's harder to hack a console than it is a PC game, because 90% of the time on PC it's just dragging and dropping a single file. Another one is crossplay. So crossplay has been getting a lot better in recent years. A game I've played crossplay a lot with is Space Marine 2. The crossplay on that's amazing and so seamless. Literally just does it that you put a code in and you can join anyone from any platform, whether it be Epic to Steam or Xbox to Steam or PlayStation to Steam. And I'm a big advocate that going forward that should just be the industry standard across all platforms, because it makes sense. If you've got friends on console, you want to play with them, but in certain games, like I believe Rainbow Siege or Rainbow Siege X, whatever it's called now, you can only do cross-platform play. So like consoles can play with other consoles, but not with PC. And like other platforms on PC can play with each other, but not. And I get it because of my previous point about hackers, but I feel it's just a risk you should be willing to take when doing crossplay, because that even further ups the chances of you encountering a hacker in general. Now, when we come across about playing multiplayer, one big perk in console's favour is local multiplayer, because it's seamless on console. You just plug another controller in, you sit on the couch, because most likely if you've got a console, it's usually hooked up to some TV in the living room or something like that. But on PC, it's a little bit different. Most PC gamers have their thing at a desk with a keyboard and mouse, and they have a controller for certain games, and it doesn't really work great because then the two of you are like huddled round the desk and all that, and a lot of PC games in general don't offer local two player or like local multiplayer. A lot expect you to do LAN, which means you'll have two people or multiple people with multiple PC setups all in the same room, hooked up using a local area network or LAN to connect to each other. And it's just very clunky. It is fun when you get it working, but it's just, I would take sitting around like a PS5 and playing split screen any day over that, to be honest, because it's just not the same. And now, my final disadvantage of PC gaming is that the overall risk of building a PC is higher, because parts can come dead, you could do something wrong that isn't covered by the warranty, and then you're stuck needing to pay for another stick of RAM, which right now is like a mortgage if you broke a stick of DDR5 RAM, and you can't just send it back because it was you that broke it. Whereas with a console, if it the worst thing that can happen is that it comes and it arrives dead and you just send it back and they send out a new one. That's probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest risks to building a PC, is that, especially if you don't know what you're doing and you mess something up really badly, it can hit your bank account like a truck careening off a bridge. Like I said before, this isn't an extensive list, so there is stuff here that I haven't covered, because if I did cover it all, we'd be sitting here for like 4 hours at least. Because there is stuff that even I've written down, but I've not been able to talk about, because as you can see, this has already been a 34-minute video. But in conclusion, there's both downsides and positives to PC gaming that you have to consider before jumping the gun and choosing what you want to do. And the aim of this video was literally just to inform people on both sides of PC gaming's better than console, console's better than PC, or someone looking to jump into either side for the first time, so they can make an educated decision. And obviously, look at more videos than just mine, because like I says, this isn't an extensive video. It's just from my experience, and even from my experience, I wasn't able to cover everything. Now, the next video from this series is going to do what we done today, but only it will be on consoles and follow the same format as today. So I hope you guys will be there for that one too, and I will catch you in the next video, guys. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you later.